I'm Greg Newkirk. In 2012, I received a panicked email from a man named Indrid Cold, a man who claimed that small alien creatures were emerging from an abandoned mineshaft near his rural Kentucky home and terrorizing his family. While initially skeptical of his story, David followed up his emails with a collection of photographs which showed the three-toed footprints left by the so-called goblins, and what he said were even images of the creatures themselves. Then, he disappeared without a trace. According to David, a man named Terry Wriste had referred him to me. I'd never heard the name before, and the only reference to Terry that I could find was in the appendix of an occult book titled Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts, in an interview which discussed his exploits cracking extraterrestrial codes and infiltrating underground alien cave bases. Then, in 2013, I received a cryptic email from Terry Wriste himself. The emails contained what appeared to be GPS coordinates and a note asking why we stopped investigating David's case when we were so close to the answers. Terry never emailed again. In 2017, spurred on by a flood of synchronicities, filmmaker Karl Pfeiffer contacted me about the case, which had long since gone cold. Convinced that the story warranted following up, Karl recruited paranormal investigator Randall, and along with my wife Dana, a lifelong hedge witch, we traveled to the heart of the case, a small mining community by the name of Hellier, Kentucky. While there, we continued to be bombarded by synchronicities, and, most unexpectedly, uncanny connections to the Mothman case, which transpired in 1967 in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. In particular, connections to an alien entity who went by the name Indrid Cold. By the end of our time in Hellier, it was clear that no one by the name of David Christie had ever lived in the broader Pike County area. Yet we left with the feeling that while we'd gone to eastern Kentucky in search of goblins, we'd found something else inside those mountains. Something old. Something asleep. Something that was already waiting for us to find it.
I just saw like a tin can. Just dropped into my mind.
Why is this
Some other force had led us to this, and I didn't know if we should be following along to whatever this thing wanted us to be following along to.
Oh my fucking god, did you hear that?
We sound fucking crazy.
You will lose your fucking mind.
But maybe it's Terry Wriste who I want to get in touch even more. Because it sounds like he's the person who instigated the whole thing. I don't know. Maybe we have a place we're supposed to go next.
How's everybody doing tonight? Everybody good? You're gonna be good. You're gonna be real good in about 10 minutes. We will talk to you guys very soon. We'll see you on Saturday night.
Yay, see you Saturday!
Adios, amigos. Thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you very soon.
Yeah.
It was sent to my personal email at WeirdHQ at 9:10 tonight.
Right after we finished our live stream.
Like literally right after we finished our live stream.
What the fuck? Exactly. It's pointless.
And again, you're going to those coordinates tomorrow, right?
I'm gonna fucking die, is what she said. Yeah, go on.
It's just the timing is very bizarre.
Wrote back at 3:58 a.m.
3:58 a.m.
Holy shit. I don't know. This is just unbridled insanity. Holy shit.
My God.
Look at this.
Oh shit, they know I'm here.
honestly, the case is a little overwhelming to a certain extent, because it's kind of this point. Season 1 had some relatively deliberate goals, and season 2 now, everything that we've been filming and researching for the last year, it's been very similar to that sort of like start and stop situation of the first couple days in Hellier. Lead, dead end. We have so many leads now and so many avenues of research, but what do we do with them? What do we do with the information that's gained, if there's even any information gained? And that's a little bit stressful, in that there's so many avenues and rabbit holes to go down, but we don't want to get too far from what made this case unique either.
When Karl tagged me for Hellier to help out with this, and I joined this project. And I think this needs to be stressed. We literally thought we were gonna make maybe an hour and a half long little documentary about trying to find this guy who saw goblins. We really thought that it was going to be a cut and dry project. Instead, what we were given is the largest case of our lives. It's funny, my focus has shifted. The paranormal has always been a passion of mine since my early teenage years, since I got a job at the Stanley, since I worked on all this ghost work, and then sort of got more interested in aliens, then was asked to help out with Hellier. And it was always sort of like a side passion though. Hellier and the passion that it has sort of struck a chord with me in this research, overall in the phenomena, paranormal phenomena in general, has really redirected that for me. Tell me how Greg's been handling the case over the last year.
I think, let me think of the way to word this. I think that more so this year, he's kind of perfected the not allowing something to get too much a part of his everyday life. So he's gotten really good at kind of like, this is when I focus on this, and then when I'm not focusing on this, I try not to focus too much on it. Because I think the thing specifically with this case is it's so consuming that you could literally sit for hours and multiple days just kind of thinking about everything, trying to put everything together. And I think he probably was more like that in the beginning. And I think over the course of, the years that we've sort of been focusing on this case, distancing yourself a little bit from it and kind of giving it the time and then not allowing it to sort of take over, I think is probably becoming what he's better at. Whereas, it used to be much different before. But I think for him now, there is that sense of sort of, it's healthier to keep it as a case and not something that kind of invades constantly that you're thinking about all the time.
There's a man upstairs, well, he's been everywhere, thinking circles in his rocking chair. Well, he walks in his sleep to the light down the street, lost his mind, but don't know where. You think it's just a light, but in his own sight, a luminescent dreamer they were waiting. You try to call his name, but he doesn't hear a thing, only the sound of angels singing.
I think there's a lot of things that make this different than other mysteries we've come across. I mean, this is the first time I've ever looked seriously into goblins. It's the first time that I've ever really taken the story of Indrid Cold very seriously. I think that if anything, this story has led me to examine other paranormal phenomena that I've been invested in a little bit harder and a little bit deeper, and maybe look at the idea of how synchronicity comes to play in a lot of the other cases that we work on. You know, one of the things that always struck me as strange about the case is that when it popped up, I was, it was sent to a group of ghost hunters. Because we're ghost hunters, we're looking at it in a way that someone who if a cryptozoologist got that email, they would look at it purely from a physical standpoint. Oh, there's strange creatures. We're looking at it from a completely other perspective. I mean, we've got people who know things about conspiracies helping with the team. We've got people who know things about UFOs helping with the team. How does psychic phenomena play into it? How does the contactee visitation play into it? It's, I think, de facto the biggest mystery that we've ever worked on, because it intersects with everything.
They try to call his name, but he doesn't hear a thing. Only the sound of angels singing.
Whoa. Oh. Again, hit that. Trying to be silenced. Here.
I want you to begin by saying how you met Greg and Dana.
The way I met Greg and Dana was actually in a strange roundabout way. I actually learned about them through John Tenney and seeing his connections and trusting those connections. And it wasn't until I was able to meet up with them actually at an event in Michigan where we kind of hit it off, I think, in a really big way. And I think we both seen value in each other. And it gave me a sense that we wanted to work with each other. And I think we almost met halfway in a lot of ways.
I described Tyler a little when he first synchronistically popped up in the case as the most excited dog you've ever met in a black vest, a black embroidered vest. I think that still holds true. Tyler he's supposed to be part of the case. The fact that he synchronistically popped up with all of that information, he was obviously supposed to be there.
Tyler Strand came to this case in a very similar way that I did. It was synchronicity. He was invited to the team by a synchronicity that seemed to be so far outside of himself and outside of us that it seemed important for him to join up.
Tyler is he's like the embodiment of enthusiasm. Like if you were to take enthusiasm and put it into like a little vial, that's Tyler. He's 100% enthusiastic about it all. And I think that it's very contagious, which I love. I think he's a great researcher, and I think that he's definitely helped us look at this differently.
Tyler is our recon man. We send him out places before everybody else goes out, and he looks at all these little, capillaries of the case. Greg holds on to the more intense things, the arteries per se, and sort of we all have our little branches. Tyler looks in detail on the ground, not interviewing people, but going to the actual locations to try to find the physical phenomena.
He's a force. With the impending release of Hellier happening in less than a month now, it seemed really important that everyone get together and just have a general meeting of the minds to see where we were now a year later. I mean, it's been 14 months since we shot the first season, and the first season gave us so many threads to chase. It was interesting because everybody kind of picked their own thread, and they'd been researching for the past year on all of these different avenues. So on basically the first day that everyone was here, we all gathered in the living room and everybody just went one by one talking about, okay, This is the thread that I picked. This is what I found out. And I mean, one of my favorite parts about it was there was stuff that no one had shared with anyone else yet. So that we were hearing and seeing this stuff for the first time, seeing everyone with these big, thick file folders just full of really interesting, pertinent information. It was fascinating to see how much we'd gotten just because of that first trip to Hellier.
What a great shot. Gooblin looking over Dana's shoulder.
You want to know what's funny about that? This was sent to me by a guy I know online who's an artist. No idea that we were doing an investigation into the goblins or anything like that. Really? Greg, thanks for taking my survey. Given your Kentucky address, I thought you could appreciate a Kelly Hopkinsville goblin.
Wow.
So an important factor of what we're going to try to do throughout the afternoon is distill information that has come up since we last ended our filming and the last time that I was here, right? But I think it's important that we first take a step back and look at everything that happened towards the beginning of our filming and sort of see how we would distill this information, what portions of the case we're ready to cross off and close, and what portions of the case we want to continue to pursue. So I have a board for each pillar of the case. David, the phenomena, and Terry Wriste. David is the easiest one at this point to cross off. We've had no continuous contact. He has disappeared. One thing that we could do is just retry that email again. Just shoot a random message. If he's reactivated it, then who knows what that could lead to. But because we spent days looking for David and we didn't find anything.
The name never even existed in the town or the surrounding towns, like the county.
Right.
So I think that's an easy one to realize, well, we're not getting the whole truth out of that. Whether that was just a pseudonym, whether it was a way to get us to Hellier, I don't know. But I think that one's an easy one. It's a dead end.
There was a house that Dana and Greg saw on their very first trip to Hellier.
In October of 2015, Greg and Dana went to Hellier for the first time. They were driving around a bunch of mountain roads, just trying to find any house that might seem like David's house. At the time, they didn't realize how big the sprawl was of that area in terms of potential places that David could have lived, and they thought it might be easy to find a house that fit that description. They did relatively quickly find a house that seemed to fit the description that David gave, and they were really excited about it. They had this kind of vibe that it felt like the place. Of course, after that, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. When we went back there, we were trying to find that house sort of loosely to see if maybe there was something we could get from it, but we also knew that might well not have been David's house. Of course, we struggled to find it. We couldn't find that house. After our expedition to Hellier, Greg sends me all of his video footage, and I finally get a chance to start looking through it. And I realized that they actually had footage of the house. They thought that their battery had died right before it and completely forgot that there was footage of the house. I backtrack with the footage, and I find the exact address of the house, which I kick over to Connor and his sister.
When Michelle, my sister, who has access through her job to a few different forums and address searches and stuff, put that in, she found the owners of that home.
Keep in mind, we're looking for David M. Christie, and we assume that his age is a little higher, 50s, 60s. The person who owns that house is David M. Parsons.
David M. Parsons. Which is so odd, right?
So weird. Yeah, so weird.
Strange.
68 years old, David M. Parsons.
So it fits the age,
right there.
the age category as well.
Exactly. He lived there in 2012 at that time. The house looks abandoned now, or at least it did when you saw it. We could have driven past it last year and not known because somebody changed everything. So you have this old guy, David M., who was living there with a granddaughter at the time. And that granddaughter would also potentially fit the description of the little kid who was having a difficult time, etc., etc. The house fits, the homeowners fit, the name almost fits.
Weirder still, as well, that their last names are consistent from like a Christian kind of religious background. Christie being a derivation of Christ, and Parsons being like a parson, a clergyman.
So the natural course of action was first to find him online, which we did. We look at his Facebook profiles, we look at everything, and immediately we sort of realized that the characterization between the really articulate wording that our David has in his emails and this guy's Facebook posts, the way that he goes about his life, very different. And that is an immediate concern or a red flag. He also didn't appear to be a doctor in any form. So we have to accept all of that as a very odd coincidence as of now. It's clear to us that this guy is not our David. What's strange about it are the synchronicities.
It's really hard to research something like this when there's so many synchronicities, because it gets really hard to know what's a connection and what's a synchronicity.
The synchronicities are still happening. I'm very close with my little sister. She knows a lot of the work that I'm currently doing, and she has an interest in it, but she had, and then I had, this huge synchronicity bomb drop that I don't know what to do with. And my grandma and her were doing family ancestry research. And my grandma's name is Harless, which is a very interesting last name. She knows that it's a family name. And they come to find out that her great-great-grandpa, my great-great-great-grandpa, was a man by the name of Joseph Harless, who it just so happens was one of the very first settlers and owned a whole bunch of land in the area that would become none other than Pikeville, Kentucky. He was there when Pikeville was created. So he was out there, my relatives. When we were in Pikeville walking around, and Pike County in general, we were walking in the footsteps of my direct ancestors, Joseph Harless. Harless Creek runs through that whole Pike County. It's possible that the goblin photos, the footprints, were taken in Harless Creek. I mean, that's entirely possible. It's right in that area and loops around. What we're starting to realize is that it's possible that synchronicities aren't necessarily a lead to follow this, but it could just be noise that's a side effect of looking into this phenomena in the first place. So we're trying to really distill what is hard research and leads that we can follow, and synchronicities that just happen because of the nature of looking into this. So in order to keep yourself grounded, you have to always go back to the linchpin, or in this case, the two linchpins in my mind, and that's David and Terry.
So one of the first things that we did, it's been a year now since we shot the first season of Hellier, and one of the things that we wanted to see was, did we ruffle any feathers? Like, did we get some people worked up? So one of the first things that we wanted to do was check and see if any of those emails, any of those email addresses that were inactive have become active again. Okay, so you want to try emailing David and Terry?
Yeah.
Update.
Just update. Are you alive? Do you exist? Ready?
Yeah.
Message sent. Okay. Well, let's see. David bounced. David's gone. Message not delivered. Subject, ACBTF. I am still in search of the ink in black. We've closed the door. We're looking at windows. Are you willing to help? I think that's straight to the point.
Yep.
Greg Newkirk.
Yeah. It didn't bounce yet.
Refresh it.
Didn't bounce.
It's an active.
Let's give it 5 minutes. Let's give it like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Because sometimes I've sent like big emails to people and it's taken a while. Let's check the sent.
It sent through just fine.
20 minutes ago.
20 minutes ago. How many times have you attempted this? Twice?
Twice now. Two other times. The last time was when you guys were here.
Jeez.
So it would have been a year ago.
That's intriguing.
I'm trying not to get too excited.
It's freaky.
So what do? Do we just wait?
Now we wait.
Keep your phone close.
Keep the camera in hand and the phone close.
Ugh, actually makes me a little nervous. We've not gotten an email back, but the implications of that address being active are pretty huge, because it probably means that he's preparing to use it.
That name, Hellier, was still secret at the time that we were sending these emails, but we had released one little teaser for this project. So I immediately wondered, everybody did, if Terry Wriste had seen the little teaser that we had released about this Goblin's Case documentary, and then reactivated the email, which would in turn mean that he's somebody who actively follows Greg or Dana on social media. So if Wriste is one of your Facebook friends, if it's somebody that you know, he could have seen that teaser and hopped it back up.
Greenfield. I'm Facebook friends with Greenfield.
But we know that the last time.
And putting on our suspicious caps, we have to think who could have possibly seen this teaser and reactivated the email, and who's friends with Greg on Facebook? Alan Greenfield. So Alan Greenfield being Terry Wriste is a possibility that we need to consider. Alan Greenfield is the author of Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts. It's in that book we see the only reference to Terry Wriste that we can find. We have to imagine that it's possible Terry Wriste is a made-up character. Finding out the truth of the matter and talking to Alan Greenfield is going to be key.
I guess the one other thing with crossing David off the list, another reason I feel that's the easiest move is because when you look at the whole tale of David contacting Greg and Dana, it seems there's always the underlying element of Wriste having been the one to contact him and give him that information. So I feel like, in a big way, what little loose ends we have with David could be covered by looking into one of these other bigger elements, which will be Wriste.
Who's Terry Wriste? That's what I want to know more than anything else going forward, because he's the crux of everything. That is the deepest mystery of it all, is where did this information come from? The very first 2 sentences of the David email. My name is David Christie. I was given your contact information through a mutual friend of ours, Terry Wriste, for the last 9 months of it. And that's the thesis of everything. The case started with that and continued through this individual and the interview and the emails that he sent to you.
When it comes to this case, Terry is very much a linchpin in everything. And we have a ton of questions about Terry, who he is, whether he was even real.
Before we really dove into Wriste as an individual, first I wanted to really exhaust and learn everything I could about Indrid Cold. Indrid Cold is our wild card. As we discovered last September on the way to Hellier, the strange cryptic email that Greg received from Terry Wriste was an email in code that basically said Indrid Cold is still here on Earth.
So now the email
There's a
says
connection.
Hellier was just a symptom. The ink and the black are isolated still, and third order is MIA. He's saying Indrid Cold is still isolated, and that the third order still hasn't reached out to save Indrid Cold from the evil Greys.
shit. Like that's what that
That's what that means. What's odd is that Indrid Cold is known from a book called The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel, which covers a case of high strangeness in the late 1960s. A large portion, in my mind, of everything involving Terry Wriste also involves Indrid Cold. You have to take into account how much we were pointed in the direction of Indrid Cold throughout our entire case research. I don't think the root of it all are these undiscovered cave creatures. I think that the root of it all are these beings, these ultra-terrestrials. There was some stuff that we missed in season 1. Woodrow Derenberger released a book about his experiences with Indrid Cold and his visits with Indrid Cold to the planet Lanulos. It's called Visitors from Lanulos. A lot of people know about the Indrid Cold story and the initial encounter. Not a lot of people read that book that he wrote later. And not a lot of people realize that Woody also talks about Indrid Cold's family and crew. What we didn't recognize is the crew's names, one name in particular. When we were sitting there doing the Estes method on a porch in Kentucky, there was a name that came up over and over again in the session, and that is Karl. Karl, breathe. Karl, listen. You can. Karl.
Before we started doing
There's Karl.
Kind of
4. We thought that he was talking to Karl, literally sitting there on the porch. What we didn't realize is that Indrid Cold's first mate, best man, his name is Karl Arda. Spelled the same way. So we have to now look at that entirety of the transcript. If we do legitimately accept the possibility that we were in contact with the larger phenomena for those minutes in Kentucky, maybe it was directly talking back. So now we need to flip through this, won't take too long, and try to see if we might have missed anything.
I mean, immediately, even reading it, it feels more important.
There's the direct answer. I think you're almost at the same spot we are. Do you know who sent us here? Karl.
You know who sent us here?
Karl, move. Indrid Cold, what happened? Who's there? Where is Indrid Cold? It's you, Karl. Speak to Connor.
Where's Indrid Cold? In a holler?
It's you, Karl. Speak to Connor. Now, that's the secondary interesting part. Is that Indrid Cold's son, as we learned from Woodrow, his name is Connor. Connor Cold.
Yeah.
So it's as if
like the two of them are there.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like that. Mm-hmm. And again, we don't want to make a stretch, but the fact that the two names that appeared, no other names did not come across except for Eddie, right? But he's our ghost, he just shows up sometimes. But there's the two names that come across. Karl is literally said more than any other word. But they might not have been talking about me and Karl. Yeah. They might have been talking about Indrid Cold's crewmates, Connor and Karl. So
I mean, that synchronicity in and of itself, the fact that Indrid Cold has become such a big part of this case, and that brought us to Karl and Connor, it's just weird. It's stuff like that, like it's like the David M.
We noticed at the very end of the session, the last thing I said before I saw the tin can, right, was this conversation about a UFO flap encompass Stillwater Bridge.
Can you help us find Indrid Cold's house?
Hit him, flap.
Like a UFO flap?
Encompass.
Encompass? Does it
What's encompassing?
Stillwater.
Stillwater.
It's encompassing Stillwater?
Bridge.
Stillwater is
And
the
a
name
bridge.
of a town.
Stillwater Bridge?
After that, we found out that there is a Stillwater Bridge in Stillwater, Minnesota, and he went there.
as it turns out, Stillwater Bridge was a location that was only 3 or 4 hours from my hometown. I didn't know what to make of it at first because this whole trip stemmed from the off chance that perhaps this is where Indrid Cold was staying. And immediately on my drive, when I arrived in Stillwater, it became apparently clear that it was eerily similar to Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Immediately, the things you would see that resonated, like Point Pleasant, were this giant power plant factory off in the distance along this river next to this bridge. The Stillwater Bridge was closed because the bridge was unstable. It was reviewed and shown to be unsafe. So that alone is already giving me this feeling. You think about the Silver Bridge collapse. And what made things even stranger is walking over to that bridge, you see this big metal statue.
So when you're in downtown Stillwater, Minnesota, of course there's going to be a giant insect statue, just like the Mothman.
And it was the strangest nod to Point Pleasant, where instead of a big metal Mothman statue, you have this big metal butterfly that's kind of arced up in the same way with its wings, and you have your bridge, you have your power plant. There was no activity on it, and I walked this place over and over and over again, waiting, looking for people, looking for strange faces, and there seemed to be nothing. There seemed to be nothing there, and I understood at the time that it really was a shot in the dark, but it was still frustrating because of how pointed everything seemed to be.
I don't know what to tell you. There's nothing here. I'm feeling defeated. I know this is the nature of the beast, so to speak.
So Stillwater was brought up in the Estes session like 2 minutes before Connor mentions the tin can. So what we realized at the end of our last trek, the expedition and all that, in season 1, that there was a tin can sighting Keel mentions in Mothman Prophecies. I'm going back through, like I shoot the interview for season 1, right?
I don't know what experience Keel was referencing. I'm sure if you read enough of his works, there's probably some obscure story about a tin can that somebody saw that was floating around a building.
And that next night, I'm sitting there editing my interview footage to put it into the end of the episode. And I look down, and on my desk next to me is Flying Saucer to the Center of Your Mind. And I'm like, Synchronicities, what the hell? Give it a shot. And I open the book, and I look down, and right there on the page that I opened to was the story of the tin can sighting that Keel referenced in Mothman. It was so weird that I don't think I even appreciated how weird it was, because it just was like, well, that just happened. But just to talk about is I wouldn't believe myself telling this story if I was listening to it, but literally just cracked it open. Radio announcer James Townsend of station KEYL in Long Prairie, Minnesota, claimed he saw 3 animated tin cans 6 inches high around a rocket-shaped device in the center of Highway 27 on October 23rd, 1965. That spot, Long Prairie, Minnesota, is an hour and some odd minutes from Stillwater. And the tin can was seen a minute or two later in the Estes session, right after he said Stillwater Bridge.
So there's a few key things on our to-do list right now in this case. We need to learn everything we can about Terry Wriste to try to figure out who he is that led Greg on this chase. Part of that is going to be talking to Alan Greenfield. Any insight that Alan Greenfield has for us, and trying to figure out if he is Terry. Speaking of Terry, we need to look at those coordinate points. What is at those numbers that Terry sent to Greg? And we need to do our best guess and figure out what is doing this to us. Is it a person? Is it something paranormal? And if it involves the cave systems, We need to get in the caves and see if we can meet that phenomena ourselves. And we need to follow up on some pretty big news that I learned about a player in this case. Because I learned something pretty major about Indrid Cold. I spent a fair amount of time researching Woodrow Derenberger. The question was proposed to John Keel himself in this book. Andy Colvin has collected articles and newspaper journals and stuff that John Keel has written. He straight up asks one of the random interviews in this big long interview that he has with Keel, do you feel that the Indrid Cold story is bogus? Point blank to John Keel. And Keel responds, yes, but I think his original story had some substance to it because he was scared
enough to go to the police. And nobody's going to go to the police with a bogus story. Derenberger was another complex character. He was a pathological liar, to put it simply. And his daughter called me a couple of years ago, was very upset that some TV show had done something about him. And he had given the whole thing up 70s or 80s and moved to Ohio. And people were always writing to me. They wanted to contact Derenberger because they wanted to contact Indrid Cold. Indrid Cold became a real entity to them.
Indrid Cold became a real entity to them, as he is a real entity to a lot of people out there. And then we find out about the story continuing through Tanya, Derenberger's daughter. Tanya Derenberger wrote a book a few years ago called Beyond Lanulos, Our 50 Years with Indrid Cold. So I read that book. You read it, and it's honestly a very endearing tale about this nice alien. And at this point, if we accept that this might be fact, I think there's something to say here. And that's that Indrid Cold is dead. According to somebody who might actually know. So, Tanya Derenberger, she said a statement on Facebook on September 18th, 2018. I just received 2 visitors carrying some devastating news. Indrid Cold, age 92, Demo Hassan, and Karl Ardo died today. When I have more information, I will pass it along. Obit posted soon.
What? What the fuck?
Oh dear, please spare me another year, oh dear. Please spare me another year, oh dear. Death comes and takes the soul, leaves the body and leaves it cold, oh dear. Please spare me another year, oh dear. Please spare me